The Adriatic Sea (Adriatic) is a body of water separating the Italian peninsula from the Balkan Peninsula and the Apennine Mountains from the Dinaric Alps and adjacent ranges. The Adriatic is the northernmost arm of the Mediterranean Sea, extending from the Strait of Otranto to the northwest and the Po Valley. The countries with coasts on the Adriatic are Italy, Croatia, Albania, Montenegro, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Slovenia. The Adriatic contains over 1,300 islands, mostly located along its eastern, Croatian, coast. It is divided into three basins, the northern being the shallowest and the southern being the deepest, with a maximum depth of 1,233 meters. The Otranto Sill, an underwater ridge, is located at the border between the Adriatic and Ionian Seas. The prevailing currents flow counterclockwise from the Strait of Otranto, along the eastern coast and back to the strait along the western coast. Tidal movements in the Adriatic are slight, although larger amplitudes are known to occur occasionally. The Adriatic salinity is lower than the Mediterranean's because the Adriatic collects a third of the fresh water flowing into the Mediterranean, acting as a dilution basin. The surface water temperatures generally range from 30 degrees Celsius in summer to 12 degrees Celsius in winter, significantly moderating the Adriatic basin's climate. The Adriatic Sea sits on the Apulian or Adriatic microplate, which separated from the African plate in the Mesozoic era. The plate's movement contributed to the formation of the surrounding mountain chains and Apennine tectonic uplift after its collision with the Eurasian plate. In the late Oligocene, the Apennine Peninsula first formed, separating the Adriatic basin from the rest of the Mediterranean. All types of sediment are found in the Adriatic, with the bulk of the material transported by the Po and other rivers on the western coast. The western coast is alluvial or terraced, while the eastern coast is highly indented with pronounced karstification. There are dozens of marine protected areas in the Adriatic, designed to protect the sea's karst habitats and biodiversity. The sea is abundant in flora and fauna. More than 7,000 species are identified as native to the Adriatic, many of them endemic, rare and threatened ones. The Adriatic's shores are populated by more than 3.5 million people. The largest cities are Bari, Venice, Trieste and Split. The earliest settlements on the Adriatic shores were Etruscan, Illyrian, and Greek. By the 2nd century BC, the shores were under Rome's control. In the Middle Ages, the Adriatic shores and the sea itself were controlled, to a varying extent, by a series of states, most notably the Byzantine Empire, the Republic of Venice, the Habsburg monarchy and the Ottoman Empire. The Napoleonic Wars resulted in the First French Empire gaining coastal control and the British effort to counter the French in the area, ultimately securing most of the eastern Adriatic shore and the Po Valley for Austria. Following Italian unification, the Kingdom of Italy started an eastward expansion that lasted until the 20th century. Following World War I and the collapse of Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, the eastern coast's control passed to Yugoslavia and Albania. The former disintegrated during the 1990s, resulting in 4 new states on the Adriatic coast. Italy and Yugoslavia agreed on their maritime boundaries by 1975, and this boundary is recognized by Yugoslavia's successor states. But the maritime boundaries between Slovenian, Croatian, Bosnian-Herzegovinian and Montenegrin waters are still disputed. Italy and Albania agreed on their maritime boundary in 1992. Fisheries and tourism are significant sources of income all along the Adriatic coast. Adriatic Croatia's tourism industry has grown faster economically than the rest of the Adriatic basins. Maritime transport is also a significant branch of the area's economy. There are 19 seaports in the Adriatic that each handle more than 1 million tons of cargo per year. The largest Adriatic seaport by annual cargo turnover is the port of Trieste. while the port of Split is the largest Adriatic seaport by passengers served per year. Geography. The Adriatic Sea is a semi-enclosed sea, bordered in the southwest by the Apennine or Italian Peninsula, in the northwest by the Italian regions of Veneto and Friuli-Venezia Giulia, and in the northeast by Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, and Albania, the Balkan Peninsula. In the southeast, the Adriatic Sea connects to the Ionian Sea at the 72-kilometer-wide Strait of Otranto. The International Hydrographic Organization defines the boundary between the Adriatic and the Ionian Seas as a line running from the Butrinta River's mouth in Albania to the Karagol Cape in Corfu, through this island to the Kefali Cape, and on to the Santa Maria di Luca Cape. It extends 800 kilometers from the northwest to the southeast and is 200 kilometers wide. It covers 138,600 square kilometers and has a volume of 35,000 cubic kilometers. The Adriatic extends northwest from 40 degrees to 45 degrees 47 north, representing the Mediterranean's northernmost portion. The sea is geographically divided into the Northern Adriatic, Central Adriatic, and Southern Adriatic. The Adriatic Sea drainage basin encompasses 235,000 square kilometers, yielding a land-sea ratio of 1.8. The drainage basin's mean elevation is 782 meters above sea level, with a mean slope of 12.1 degrees. Major rivers discharging into the Adriatic include the Po, Soca, Krka, Neretva, Drin, Bojana, and Vihose. In the late 19th century, Austria-Hungary established a geodetic network with an elevation benchmark using the average Adriatic sea level at the Sartorio Pier in Trieste, Italy. The benchmark was subsequently retained by Austria, adopted by Yugoslavia, and retained by the states that emerged after its dissolution. The Adriatic Sea contains more than 1,300 islands and islets, most along the Adriatic's eastern coast, especially in Croatia, with 1,246 counted. The number includes islands, islets, and rocks of all sizes, including ones emerging at ebb tide only. The Croatian islands include the largest, Crescent and Krka, each covering about the same area of 405.78 square kilometers, and the tallest, Brac, whose peak reaches 780 meters above sea level. The islands of Crescent and the adjacent Lusage are separated only by a narrow navigable canal dug in the time of classical antiquity. The original, single island was known to the Greeks as Apsiatides. The Croatian islands include 48 permanently inhabited ones, the most populous among them being Krka and Korčula. The islands along the Adriatic's western coast are smaller and less numerous than those along the opposite coast. The best-known ones are the 117 islands on which the city of Venice is built. The northern shore of the Greek island of Corfu also lies in the Adriatic Sea as defined by the IHO. The IHO boundary places a few smaller Greek islands in the Adriatic Sea. Bathymetry. The Adriatic Sea's average depth is 259.5 meters, and its maximum depth is 1,233 meters. However, the North Adriatic Basin rarely exceeds a depth of 100 meters. The North Adriatic Basin, extending between Venice and Trieste towards a line connecting Ancona and Zadar, is only 15 meters deep at its northwestern end. It gradually deepens towards the southeast. It is the largest Mediterranean shelf and is simultaneously a dilution basin and a site of bottom water formation. The Middle Adriatic Basin is south of the Ancona-Zadar line, with the 270-meter-deep Middle Adriatic Pit. The 170-meter-deep Palagruza Sill is south of the Middle Adriatic Pit, separating it from the 1,200-meter-deep South Adriatic Pit and the Middle Adriatic Basin from the South Adriatic Basin. Further on to the south, the seafloor rises to 780 meters to form the Otranto Sill at the boundary to the Ionian Sea. The South Adriatic Basin is similar in many respects to the Northern Ionian Sea, to which it is connected. Transversely, the Adriatic Sea is also asymmetric. The Apennine Peninsula coast is relatively smooth with very few islands, and the Monte Conero and Gargano promontories as the only significant protrusions into the sea. In contrast, the Balkan Peninsula coast is rugged with numerous islands, especially in Croatia. The coast's ruggedness is exacerbated by the Dinaric Alps' proximity to the coast, in contrast to the opposite coast where the Apennine Mountains are further away from the shoreline. Hydrology. The coastal water dynamics are determined by the asymmetric coasts and the Mediterranean sea waters inflow through the Straits of Otranto, and further on along the eastern coast. The smooth Italian coast allows the western Adriatic current's smooth flow, which is composed of the surface's relatively fresh water mass and the bottom's cold and dense water mass. The coastal currents on the opposite shore are far more complex, due to the jagged shoreline, several large islands and the Dinaric Alps' proximity to the shore. The last produces significant temperature variations between the sea and the hinterland, which leads to the creation of local jets. The tidal movement is normally slight, usually remaining below 30 centimeters. The amphidromic point is at the mid-width east of Ancona. The normal tide levels are known to increase significantly in a conducive environment, leading to coastal flooding. This phenomenon is most famously known in Italy, especially Venice, as Acqua Alta. Such tides can exceed normal levels by more than 140 centimeters, with the highest tide level of 194 centimeters observed on 4 November 1966. Such flooding is caused by a combination of factors, including the alignment of the sun and moon, meteorological factors such as Sirocco-related storm surges, and the basin's geometric shape. Moreover, the Adriatic's long and narrow rectangular shape is the source of an oscillating water motion along the basin's minor axis. Finally, Venice is increasingly vulnerable to flooding due to coastal area soil subsidence. Such unusually high tides resulting in flooding have also been observed elsewhere in the Adriatic Sea, and have been recorded in recent years in the towns of Koper, Zadar and Šibenik as well. It is estimated that the Adriatic's entire volume is exchanged through the Strait of Otranto in 3.4 plus or minus 0.4 years, a comparably short period. This short period is particularly important as the rivers flowing into the Adriatic discharge up to 5,700 cubic meters per second. This rate of discharge amounts to 0.5% of the total Adriatic Sea volume, or a 1.3-metre layer of water each year. The greatest portion of the discharge from any single river comes from the Po, with an average discharge from it alone of 1,569 cubic meters per second. In terms of the annual total discharge into the entire Mediterranean Sea, the Po is ranked second, followed by the Nereva and Drin, which rank as third and fourth. Another significant contributor of fresh water to the Adriatic is the submarine groundwater discharge through submarine springs. It is estimated to comprise 29% of the total water flux into the Adriatic. The submarine springs include thermal springs, discovered offshore near the town of Isola. The thermal spring water is rich with hydrogen sulfide, has a temperature of 22 to 29.6 degrees Celsius, and has enabled the development of specific ecosystems. The inflow of fresh water, representing a third of the freshwater volume flowing into the Mediterranean, makes the Adriatic a dilution basin for the Mediterranean Sea. The Middle and South Adriatic gyres are significant cyclonic circulation features, with the former being intermittent and the latter permanent. The SAG measures 150 kilometers in diameter. It contributes to the flow of bottom water from the Adriatic to the Levantine Basin through the Ionian Sea. Through that process, the Adriatic Sea produces most of the East Mediterranean deep water. Temperature and salinity. The Adriatic's surface temperature usually ranges from 22 to 30 degrees Celsius in the summer, or 12 to 14 degrees Celsius in the winter, except along the western Adriatic coast's northern part, where it drops to 9 degrees Celsius in the winter. The distinct seasonal temperature variations, with a longitudinal gradient in the northern and transversal gradient in the middle and southern Adriatic, are attributed to the continental characteristics of the Adriatic Sea. It is shallower and closer to land than our oceans. During particularly cold winters, sea ice may appear in the Adriatic's shallow coastal areas, especially in the Venetian lagoon, but also in isolated shallows as far south as Tisno. The southern Adriatic is about 8 to 10 degrees Celsius warmer during the winter than the more northerly regions. The Adriatic's salinity variation over the year is likewise distinct. It ranges between 38 and 39 pSUs. The southern Adriatic is subjected to saltier water from the Levantine Basin climate as in most Mediterranean basin areas. The Adriatic Sea and its surrounding landmass enjoy the Mediterranean climate, a type of subtropical climate. Since the Adriatic Sea is located in the mid-latitudes, it is characterized by a seasonally variable climate. It is also characterized by warm to hot, dry summers and mild to cool, wet winters. The air temperature fluctuates by about 20 degrees Celsius during a season. According to the Köppen climate classification, the southern and central Adriatic are classified as hot summer Mediterranean climate and the northern Adriatic as humid subtropical climate areas. The predominant winter winds are the Bora and Sirocco. The Bora is significantly conditioned by wind gaps in the Dinaric Alps bringing cold and dry continental air. It reaches peak speeds in the areas of Trieste, Say, and Split, with gusts of up to 180 km per hour. The Sirocco brings humid and warm air, often carrying Saharan sand causing rain dust. Population on the Adriatic Sea's coasts and islands. There are numerous small settlements, and a number of larger cities. Among the largest are Bari, Venice, Trieste, and Rimini in Italy, Split, Rijeka and Zadar in Croatia, Durrës and Vlora in Albania and Koper in Slovenia. In total, more than 3.5 million people live on the Adriatic coasts. There are also some larger cities that are located very near the coast, such as the Italian cities of Ravenna and Lecce. Coastal management. Venice, which was originally built on islands off the coast, is most at risk due to subsidence, but the threat is present in the Po Delta as well. The causes are decrease in sedimentation rate due to loss of sediment behind dams, the deliberate excavation of sand for industrial purposes, agricultural use of water, and removal of groundwater. The sinking of Venice slowed after artesian wells were banned in the 1960s, but the city remains threatened by the Acqua Alta floods. Recent studies have suggested that the city is no longer sinking, but a state of alert remains in place. In May 2003, then Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi inaugurated the MOSE project, an experimental model for evaluating the performance of inflatable gates. The project proposes laying a series of 79 inflatable pontoons across the seabed at the three entrances to the Venetian lagoon. When tides are predicted to rise above 110 centimeters, the pontoons will be filled with air and block the incoming water from the Adriatic Sea. This engineering work is due to be completed by 2014.